Welcome to our myth-busting segment, the myths that disability insurance policyholders believe about ERISA and individual disability insurance, and the truth. Look, I love that movie, the Ghostbusters, and I'm a myth-buster. I take my inspiration from that great flick. So I want you to understand your ERISA and individual disability insurance policy, the ERISA and individual disability insurance claims process, and the games that carriers are going to play in either delaying or denying your benefits. You have probably heard lots of myths from your neighbors, your friends, lawyers, and even insurance agents. And I hear these myths every day. And I've got to spend some time myth busting before we can get down to the real nuts and bolts of a case. So what's today's myth? If your doctor writes a note that you're disabled, the carrier is going to overnight you a check. So where do we start? Well, let's start with what a disability insurance carrier does when they get your claim. Among the forms they ask you to get filled out is an attending physician statement form, and they want to look at your medical records. So that attending physician statement form will rarely, in my view, ask the right questions. And as a result, I always modify the attending physician statement form to ask the right questions. So for example, if you have a medical condition that such as, say, fibromyalgia, and they're asking all sorts of questions that are not relevant to your symptoms or the problems that you're having on that APS form, I want to modify it. And one of the ways that I do that is I will use a Social Security Disability Residual Functional Capacity form. Now, I'm also a Social Security disability attorney, and there are over probably 60 residual functional capacity forms that lawyers have developed over the years. And so I want to pick out the right Social Security Residual Functional Capacity form and modify that and the APS form and ask your doctor to complete both forms. Now, because I've practiced for so many years and handled many different medical conditions, I know how I want to modify the APS form and the residual functional capacity form so that the right questions are asked in your case about your symptoms and functionality. Now, the typical APS form asks for the diagnosis, the objective findings that support the diagnosis, and they're going to ask questions about your functionality form, like your ability to sit, stand, walk, and lift. The form is designed so that your doctor releases you to do some form of sedentary work, and it really rarely asks you to get answers from your doctors about your ability to perform your occupational duties. So in other words, it's a generic form. It's got no relevance to your disabling medical condition and how that condition impacts your ability to do the material and substantial duties of your occupation. And the other thing that the form will ask is the objective basis of the restrictions and limitations. So I'm asked, well, how about if I just get a note from the doctor that says I'm disabled or I can't work? That's not going to cut it, because the carrier also wants to understand the causal relationship between your diagnosis or your restrictions and limitations and your inability to do your own occupation. And they're going to look then at your medical records to determine if there's an objective basis for the diagnosis, the restrictions, and are your complaints consistent. So the carrier is going to have two sets of documents. They're going to have on the right-hand side a stack of your medical records. Left-hand side, they're going to have that attending physician statement form. And they're going to also, by the way, have a third document, and that's the activity of daily living form that you've been asked to complete as part of the application process. Now, it's crucial that you review your medical records before you file a claim to make sure that they're accurate, complete, and address your symptoms and functionality. Because the disability carrier is going to go from document to document to document and see what you've said about your occupation, what your doctor said about your occupation, what you said about your restrictions and limitations in terms of your functionality, what your doctor says, what your complaints are about your symptoms, the frequency, the duration, the intensity. And the carrier is looking for inconsistency. They want to see if you're being consistent with what you're telling the doctor and what the doctor is saying about you. Because one of the ways they attack a claim is to see if your doctor's relying on your subjective complaints in rendering opinions about your restrictions and limitations. So if you say in your ADL form that you can't even lift 10 pounds, and your doctor says they can't lift 10 pounds because you have an increased onset of symptoms, but I think based on their complaints they can't even lift 5 pounds, then there's going to be some head scratching, because they're going to be the carrier is going to be looking for inconsistencies, and that can trigger surveillance. So if there's any inconsistency between what you report to your doctor about what you can do and any inconsistencies between your ADL forms and what the doctor says you can do, so that there's this obvious discrepancy, I guarantee they're going to put surveillance on you. They're going to contact your physician after they have done the surveillance to see if they can get your physician to move off those restrictions and limitations. And if they can't, they're going to say, well, the doctor, in rendering their opinion regarding restrictions and limitations, is relying on the subjective complaints of the patient, the policyholder. And here's a conflict between what the person said on their ADL forms and what the doctor says. And by the way, we've got film of them doing something completely different that they said they couldn't do. So we're going to reject all the physician's opinions because the physician is relying on your subjective complaints, which are refuted by the surveillance film. So the truth is that just because your doctor says that you are disabled isn't going to make it so. The carrier is going to look at your ADL forms, going to look at your medical records, going to look at what your physician has said on the attending physician statement form, and they're going to be looking for consistency. Inconsistency will kill your claim. So next week, we're going to take on myth 5. If the disability insurance company sends an activity of daily living form to me, it's because they're sincerely interested in what I'm able to do daily. And they're going to rely on that form and sending me that check for my disability benefits. In the next segment, I'm going to be telling you what one federal judge did about a short-term disability carrier's last-minute denial of benefits because the treating physician failed to respond to a call from the carrier's peer review provider.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy with tips and to-dos regarding your disability application that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you won't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we are giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.